Jannavalabha Girivanadari Gopi Jannavalabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pavikaradacharya Shota Shota Shishiman His Divine Grace A. Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya All right, so we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 8, texts 10 and 11. And tomorrow we will go backwards to a previous verse. Is that coming up, or is someone's doing that on the screen? All right, we can start the word for word. So, yeah, okay. So, Uda, Aplutam, Vishvam, Idam, Tada, Asit, Yat, Nidraya, Amilita, Drik, Nyamilayat, Ahi Indra, Talpe, Adishayanaha, Ekaha, Krita, Shanaha, Swaatmaratau, Niryaha. Okay. Uda Plutam Vishramidam Tarasid Yanidrayami Litadrin Nyamiliyat Ahindratalpe Dishyayana Ekaha Krita Shana Swatma Ratao Nirihaha Uda Plutam Vishwamidam Tarasid Yanidjayami Litadrin Nyamiliyat Ahindra Talpe Dishayana Ekaha Kritashana swatma rata niriha. Yannidrayami litandrinnayat. Mataji's? Okay, so word for word translation. So, Uda, water. Aplutam, submerged in. Vishvam, the three worlds. Idam, this. Tada, at that time. Asit, so it remained. Yat, in which. Nindraya, in slumber. Amilita, closed. Drik, eyes. Nyamilayat, not completely closed. Ahi Indra, the great snake Ananta. Talpe, on the bed of. Adishayanaha, lying on. Ekaha, alone. Krita, shanaha, being engaged. Swatmaratao, enjoying in his internal potency. Niryaha, without any part of external energy. Okay, translation and purport by Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Okay, at that time, when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbho Dakashayi Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta. And although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. The Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. And now the next text. So nanta sarire ripa bhuta sukshmaha kalat mikam satkam adara yanaha Uvasatasmin salile pade swe yatanolo daruni rudha viraha. So, just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. Purport. After the three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems merged into the water of dissolution, the living entities of all the three worlds remained in their subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed, just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as is the case in the full dissolution of the material world. Om Jnana Tamanandasya Garanjanjana Shalakaya Chakshrodan Vanitamyena Tashmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Parakamanam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganavtamitam Tam Shajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shiraraha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalitam Shri Vishakamitam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhakti Vikas Swaminiti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shuni Vadi Paskyatar Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Vande Yat Prasara Sayavir Yataha Sangadat Yat Karavatarada Siddhanta Sanmanim. Okay, so Udali Uda Plutam Vishwamidam Tasad Sid Yan Nidraya Milhita Drin Nayamilat Ahindratalpe Dishanaya Ekaha Katashana Swatma Rata Niraha. And so Nantara Sarire Ripat Bhuta Shukshma Kalatma Mikam Sat Shaktim Udari Yanaha Uvasatas Min Salile Pade Sway Yatanolo Daruni Rudarya Viryaha. The translations. At that time, when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead. The great snake Ananta, and although he appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the invigorated energy called Kala. So we are beginning descriptions of, this chapter is called Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu. So let's see here. And so anyways, this is a description of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. And from the text, there's a couple, from this text and also from both the text, we can understand, Prabhupada says in the purport of text 11, but he says that after the three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems merged in the water of dissolution. So this is not exactly the beginning of creation, as we read, that there is already some creation because they've been merged into dissolution. So there's been some creation. So this is like some partial devastation, or devastation of sorts. And so we understand that the universes, they're destroyed in the particular life of Brahma, and then they're recreated. And so this is kind of like what's going on here. So that's the situation. And we understand that. It's mentioned at the point in there, at the time when the three worlds were submerged in water. Because we read previously, and I think it's mentioned here in the third canto, but also in the second canto, that when there was creation, then there was all these different demigods, they were there and they entered into this and they entered into that. and then Brahma was born, and then there was just darkness, and he didn't know whether to go up or go down or left or what was going on, and he didn't know where he came from or what that source was, and so he gained in tapasya. And then he got, when the Lord was pleased with him, then Vishnu gave him darshan, and then instructed him, and then there's different accounts, but then gave him a vision of the spiritual world. And then so Brahma then created the spiritual world with like that in mind. And then as we'll read, and then everything was created, but then that's not all. If you engineer a city or you create some master plan of the greatest city in the universe, then you need people to be in that city. So that was the next part. And we'll read about that also. Then this creation of progeny. And it was also, Brahma also needed help for that. He was able, and we also see, and that's good to understand, that we may be expert in some particular field or may be empowered in Krishna consciousness because Brahma is empowered. But then we also may need help to do other things. So Brahma is empowered to create. He's one of the guna avatars, so he's particularly empowered with this potency of Vishnu, this particular type of Rajagun, so for like creation. So he's able to like create. And sometimes he also comes under the sway of passion. That's mentioned there. As we'll read later, that he got upset when his sons, Sanat Kumara, which also we're discussing here, when they didn't want to create progeny. But then we see also that even though they disobeyed the instruction of their father, that they went on to do amazing things in the spiritual sphere. It wasn't that they just renounced, like nowadays there's so many different funny things, but there's a whole movement nowadays, and there's basis for that in the current context of the degraded society of, it goes on both parties, I guess, but men, they don't want to get married. But why do they not want to get married? Well, mainly because they see so many divorces, and they see that, people get married and they suffer so much. And so they think, well, I'll avoid that and not get married. And usually they don't live as brahmacharis. They usually just go around and party and enjoy and stuff like that. And that's obviously not a good alternative. But that idea is there. So the four Kumaras, they rejected that idea, but then they did something substantial. And so they preached very much, and then they also got darshan of Shankarshan. And they also went to Vaikuntha and got darshan of Vishnu. And that is also described here in the third canto, about them going to Vaikuntha and seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his own abode. Not only did they see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Vishnu came to see them also, just to see the situation, because there was a problem outside one of the gates of Vaikuntha. So that pastime is narrated, and they smelled the aroma of the tulsi leaves on the feet of Vishnu. And at that particular point in time, it's mentioned that they had a psychological change, something changed in their brains for the good, and they became devotees after that. And so Brahma had to figure out how to create. So anyways, he created some different living beings, and then this Swayambhuva Manu, I believe, was specifically created to kind of like speed up the process. And I forget who Swayambhuva Manu's wife is. Anybody remember? Is it I don't think it's Prishni. Sutapa or something? Shatarupa, yeah. So that was created like that. And so then the third canto goes on to describe all this also. So then they had some offspring. I forget exactly how much. I'm fuzzy. They had, I believe, what was that? I believe they had three specific daughters, because that's like they had. I'd have to really like think about it. But one of their daughters was obviously Devahuti, and so Devahuti was married to Kardama Muni, and so that's also described here. And so like that. And anyways, so the universe was filled with different living entities. So that is Brahma's duty to do that, and that is his service. So the coming back to this verse, so we see here that Vishnu is lying on the bed with his eyes half closed. I thought one interesting point was here, and this is a side point, but it's mentioned here, nidraya, in slumber. And so we understand previously in the second canto that Sukadeva Goswami describes materialistic people. So he mentions, what is this, nidraha niyate naktam vavayena chavavayaha. Divya Tratahe Raja, Kuntumba Varanenaba. So he mentions that materialistic people, in the day they work hard for money, and what is it? They engage in sense gratification. Is that it? Money and sense? Anybody know? Oh, no, it's sense gratification and money, huh? And then at night, night is sleeping and sex. So Vishnu is also sleeping, kind of. But it's saying he appears to be in slumber. So anyways, the point is that Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that this is his pastime by his internal potency. So he's not sleeping how the other conditioned souls or other living entities in the material world are sleeping, that Sukadeva Goswami is describing. So it's always an important point to understand that, but there is a difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Jivas, and it's not the same. Can look exactly the same, but it's not the same. Krishna is crying when Salva killed the false Vasudeva. He created some illusory Vasudeva and then chopped off his head. So Krishna was crying. But his crying is not like our crying and his so-called lamentation. Just like we see in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he was crying and lamenting and so many ways disturbed, mentally insane, right? If you read in the Adi Leela, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was running after things and mistaking things that didn't exist, right? So it's described that he chased a sand dune and he mistaken that for Govardhan. And then somehow or other he wound up in the ocean, thinking that was like the Yamuna, and some fisherman found him. So he was insane. But his insanity was on the platform of the absolute, which is completely spiritual. So it's not mundane insanity. So the thing is that materialists will never be able to understand these things. It's completely beyond their purview, their understanding, their perception of reality. It cannot be understood. It can only be understood through parampara, evam parampara praptam. That is how the Supreme Lord reveals himself, and that's the system by which he gives the knowledge to understand it. So that's the basis of this verse, as we were establishing previously. So this information was spoken by Shankarshan himself to the four Kumaras, and then in this way they spoke this knowledge from one disciple to another, and then the information was relayed to Maitreya Muni, who is now speaking this to Vidura, and we're similarly speaking on it. And so many other people also spoke on this too. It's not that we were the only ones to discuss this or hear this. This is knowledge that's been there since time immemorial, and also in other universes. We're not the only universe that has the information of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the basis of this verse. So it's coming in disciplic succession. So there's three particular Vishnu forms that are mentioned. So Karno Dakashayi Vishnu, Garbo Dakashayi Vishnu, and Shiro Dakashayi Vishnu. And so Karno Dakashayi Vishnu is lying outside the universes. So the universe is coming from the pores of his skin. And so he's there, engaging in his pastimes. And there's description of him throughout Shastra. That's also there if you remember reading in Krishna book. In Krishna book, when the Brahmana sons were stolen and they would go off and fly into the sky, so Arjuna and Krishna, they went to where Karna Dakashayi Vishnu lives, in the Karna ocean, like that. And so they went there and there was some conversation and they took darshan and like that. So there's a description given there in the 10th canto also of his palace, and he was hanging out there. And I think also too the personified Vedas are there engaging in different glorification. So that is there. And then Shiro Dakashayi Vishnu, we understand that when Krishna or his avatars incarnate in this material sphere, that they come through the agency of Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. And Kshirodakashayi Vishnu is laying, so Shira, so milk and milk ocean. So like that. So he's there in the milk ocean. And then that we see also, like in the beginning of the 10th canto, when the demigods had a problem, they went to the ocean, the milk ocean. And then Brahma, they began to offer some prayers and things. And Brahma received a telepathic message and understand that, okay, Vishnu would come. So he's there like that, engaging in pastimes also. So we can go there if we want. The thing is that in for living beings and other planets, they're not so like sectioned off. They can go to other planets and they can have darshan of Vishnu, they can see and they can interact with him. And he interacts with them also. But it can be a little bit mixed because sometimes it's not exactly pure devotional service, because we see the demigods, they have some problem, they go and pray, like, Vishnu, please help us. Vishnu helps. And then they go back to their lives. And then we see descriptions like that of Indra and other demigods I mentioned in the Bhagavatam, of them being in some trouble, getting Vishnu's help, but then doing something pretty disastrous for their spiritual life and their material life, and suffering in that way. Just like we see in the 6th canto with Indra, he disrespected his spiritual master. And so that's there to teach us. It's not just some story and like that. But so Indra disrespected his spiritual master. How did that happen? It's described that he became intoxicated with his position. So we can also be wary of that in Krishna consciousness, that we never forget our position, actually, that we're servants. We may be in the position of being in charge of others or whatever that may be. We may be in charge of 2 devotees. We may be in charge of 100 devotees. We may be the guru of thousands of devotees or thousands, or be in charge of a big temple. But the point is that that position is taken as a servant, that we're in charge of all these individuals, but we're their servant. So that's like the mentality to have. So Indra somehow or other got a little confused about that. So his spiritual master came in, and so instead of standing up to receive him, all this glorification was going on, and Indra, you're so great, you're so wonderful, amazing. And so his spiritual master came in, and he kind of didn't really make any endeavor to respect him. And so Brihaspati saw that and was just like, that's not good. And so he left. And Indra realized, I screwed up. And so he tried to find Brihaspati, but Brihaspati he hid himself in order to, because he understood he made a mistake, but at the same time it was like he kind of wanted just to apologize. Brihaspati may have sensed that, just to apologize, just to make things better. So anyway, that happened, and Indra lost his kingdom and had to suffer. And then Vritrasura was born, and then it was a whole thing. And then he became more and more implicated. And then he also had to do penances under the water for so many thousands of years, I believe in, Manasarovara. So it's mixed with the demigods, with them approaching Vishnu. So that's there also to teach us that we shouldn't approach Vishnu, Krishna, or the spiritual master in a mixed way. That, I want you, Krishna, but I also want this, which is separate from you. Or I want to enjoy this, which is I want to enjoy this material energy, and at the same time, anyways, that's a level of Krishna consciousness. But the point is that we shouldn't be aspiring for that. That I want to enjoy the material energy, and at the same time, I want to be Krishna conscious. So we should be aspiring that I want to be Krishna conscious, and I don't want to enjoy the material energy. Not praying in that way. And we see that, that's there so much throughout Bhagavatam. You can read and you can reflect on those things. So anyways, so Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is there, and he enters into every single universe. So there's unlimited universes, and Krishna enters into them and gets things going. There's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it is a short, simple verse. So it's in the Mangalacharam. So Yasyaham Srila Garbhodakashayi Yanyamyajam Loka Sagatnanalam Loka Shashtu Stutikadamadatus Tam Shinityananda Ramam Prapadye. So Krishnadas Kaviraj cites this verse saying, so I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of the multitudes of planets. So this verse here talks a little bit about Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So Garbhodakashayi Vishnu enters into the universe and then fills half the universe up with water. So the sweat that comes from the pores of his skin. And then Brahma is created from his navel, so a lotus comes and Brahma is born on that. And then within that lotus, that's where the universes are actually. They're not just like kind of floating all randomly about here and there. They have a specific zone which they're set. And so they're within that lotus actually. And then I believe from like the ingredients or from, I don't know how it works, I'm not Brahma, but from that lotus he's able to create everything and like, I guess, tap into that Shakti. And let's see here. So that anyways, that talks a little bit about Vishnu. So then coming back to this verse here, just another angle of this. So at that time when the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu was alone, lying on his bedstead. The great snake Ananta, and although he appeared to be in slumber, in his own internal potency, free from the action of external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. So, 1 second. Alrighty. So another angle at this verse completely, in which some people may read, but they may think that all these different things being mentioned here and being spoken of, they may think two things. One thing they may think, and we hear that a lot, and we see that a lot, especially nowadays, that this is all myth. This isn't real. Because it can't be real, right? I mean, what is, we don't see any of this in our reality, and so many of these different things like that. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But another point of view, which we see, which is also common nowadays, is people read that, and then they think that, so the three worlds, and Vishnu's in the water, and he has four hands, and he's lying on a bed of snakes, and Brahma's coming out from him. So all these different things, what's the symbolism behind it? What does it actually mean? And then we see like that. And then people, that's very common nowadays, that symbolism of everything. That, okay, this is said in scripture, or this is said of that. But what is the deeper meaning? So what's the symbolism? What can we learn from that? And Srila Prabhupada, anyways, before we get into that, so like that. So people may think like that. And then that kind of like, they may in a subtle way, they may not accept what may not actually be real because it's symbolic. It's like, okay, all this happened, but then then they screw out so many different meanings from that it's symbolic, and so then it can mean this to you and mean this to me, and then like that, and then it's like you get then the whole Shastra becomes completely open up to like unlimited interpretation. And that happens with scripture and with Jesus and stuff. And anyways, you go and you distribute books, or you talk to some of these like Mayavad people, and they have like unlimited interpretations about like the Bible or this or that. And I heard some new stuff recently from somebody about like the Holy Grail or whatever, that is like a sound bowl or something. So I was like, okay, that's like something new. I was like, wow, it's just unlimited. I was like, wow, I never heard that one. I was like, okay, interesting. But people, they can completely just transpose just so many different misconceptions, and that's the point, that we have misconceptions and then we transpose those on the Shastra, and then we come out with so many different funny things. And I remember before I got the opportunity to associate with devotees, I had Krishna book, but that was the only book I had, and I was chanting. But I used to go to a Hindu temple. Which I don't. Did you go to Orlando? Go to that Hindu temple? I know Mahotsa went. You went there? Yeah, the big one. You never. Okay, I know Janardhan went. Some of the devotees went, but they purified that place because that place was not very purified before. I mean, it was purified to like compared to like what I was doing, but it was a long way from pure devotional service. So, anyways, I was going to this Hindu temple, and so they had like this book. It was like a small book, but pretty much it had like all the main like Hindu gods, and demigods. So I remember. Ramachandra was in there, and Krishna and Radha were in there, and I think Ganesh was in there, Durga was in there, and I think Shiva was in there. But anyways, it was like a book, and it had like a picture of like like some of these personalities, and then it would have had like arrows pointing to every single thing. Like Krishna had like a flute, so like that symbolized something, and then he's with like Radharani, so that symbolized something, and then like Ramachandra had a bow, that symbolized something. I forget what all those things did. And then Ganesh, that symbolized something, and he had like there's like a little mouse there, so that symbolized something, and like a bowl of sweets. So it was like all these different things are there. Krishna has a peacock feather. I forget. I remember I had that book. I read through it a couple of times, but I can't remember like what it said. It's probably good I don't remember. But all these different things, they symbolized like whatever. Durga's like riding on a lion, and that symbolized. So it's all like symbolism. And like I'm saying, is it real or is it not real? It's like, well, it doesn't know, but it means this, and then you can learn this from that. And then it's also too with like Mayavadis, it's like perfect for them, because then it's like, well, because they don't really accept some of that stuff anyways. They accept it, but then it's ultimately it's like, anyways, what does it matter? It's all material. The real spiritual thing is Brahman. So like that. And then, and then Lakshmi has a flower, so what is that? So then all this different like symbolism of what does it actually mean. And we do see actually in Shastra sometimes there is symbolism. If we see this a couple places, I think in Chaitanya Siksamrita, and also in Krishna Samhita by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He does the point that in Krishna's Leela, some of these different things, they're symbolic or they're representations of things. Like he mentions, you may have, like this class recently that Bhakti Vikash Maharaj gave, he mentioned about Dana-Kasura, that this anartha of being like an ass, of being just stupid and being egoistical, like that. And then Putana, we see that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he explained that like Putana is like the pseudo-guru. And then there's other things. Brahma, with this Brahma Vimohana Leela, when he steals the cow, her boys, I think that's like being like overly intelligent. And then it goes on, pretty much all of Krishna Leela. It's mentioned that Kamsa is like personified atheism, and then Jarasandhar, I think he's like they mentioned like a sacrifice, and then his two daughters like that, he gives in charity to, Kamsa. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives all that and explains all that. And I've heard also that we see that Srila Prabhupada, in some respects, he didn't really get into that so much, and he kind of kept away from that. And I've heard it explained that like because he didn't want his disciples and devotees, and also like that hippie culture, to kind of like take that and then focus so much on the symbolism, and then start to think, well, it doesn't really matter if like this is real or whatever. We can learn from this and learn from that. So some acharyas do explain that like some of these different things we can understand like that. And there may be like lessons too that I can understand, and that's there in Shastra. But the point is, the main thing is that it's dangerous if we begin to think about these things that they're not historical. Because this is historical. These are historical events. And, we may think, well, history is just, whatever, World War II, World War I, and then this happened with Russia, and that happened with the United States, and then all that stuff. That's history. That's temporary history. But Shastra is actually history, the creation of the universe, and we should understand it in that way, and we should speak in that way also. We may say different things, this story and that story. We can say, but it's also a historical fact. If we talk about Krishna Leela or something, we may say the pastimes or the stories or whatever, and that's okay. But we should understand, like internally, and we should also verbalize that this is a historic thing that happened. That Krishna was here, he performed these pastimes. He did the Rasa Leela. That's a history. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's a history. Of course, we don't become over concerned with historical facts and figures. What was it that Guru Maharaj mentioned? Two words. I think morphology in that class by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Morphology. So, which one is the historical thing? That is the external. That's what I was thinking. So, and this class that Bhakti Vikash Maharaj gave, I forget exactly what it was called. Let me just, I don't think I'll have it up exactly. But anyways, the class recently he gave on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was explaining in that class like the historical context of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and some of the personalities he was with. What was that one main guy? I forget. John Anderson. So he spoke a lot about him and his relationship with Bhaktivinoda Thakur and like that. And just like the whole situation with like the British and them ruling India and then Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's very amazing, actually, all those different things. And then how the acharyas, they utilize those situations to present the absolute truth and engage people in devotional service. As like, anyways, like listen to that class again recently. It blew my mind the first time I heard it. It blew my mind again. And then there's like a lot of things that like I'm thinking about personally. Just about like how these acharyas preach and spreading Krishna consciousness, which anyways, I probably won't get into in this class. So in that class, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj just makes the point about just like that Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya, they spoke, and I'm kind of elaborating. Lord Chaitanya traveled all around, had so many different associates, but the main thing isn't just to like understand, okay, this person went here and did this, and then this year that happened, and then this happened, and then that, like with all like the details of it. But the main thing is to understand the actual like message. Okay, like Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, what did they discuss, and what's like the point of that? And then we may understand too that Ramananda Roy, okay, he was at Maharaj Prataparuja, and he was working in the government like that, and that was his situation, and that may be there. But the main thing isn't just the historical account, but we also have to accept the historical account, because then we don't want to just reject that. Otherwise, if we reject it, that it's not a history, or maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, or whatever. If we accept it or if we don't accept it, because the point is that if we don't accept the historical accounts of Shastra, or so many things that go with that, the astronomy of the Vedas and like that, of the planets and of creation and all that different stuff, then what do we accept in place of that? What are we accepting as how the universe is created? And then we may say, well, I don't know, and then we may be agnostic. We're practicing Krishna consciousness, but then we don't accept the Shastra in some parts, but then we don't have an explanation for that. Or we may accept explanation of, of the materialist. Or we may be influenced in that regards, or contaminated in that sense. And we see that sometimes with different religions, that people are Christian or Muslim or whatever. But then as far as like the creation of the material world goes, their understanding is atheistic. And so they, they believe in a big bang. I don't really know how they work all that out exactly. Or maybe they don't really work it out, or they don't think about it so much. Or like that, or they have a lot of faith in science. Or it's like partially here and there, that, okay, they believe in this and that, but then they believe in like atheistic things also. And you can have like a whole gambit of that. They believe that God created the world and the universe, but then they also believe in evolution. And different funny little things like that. It's a confusing time in Kali Yuga. And so like that, and it may be, and it's realistic to understand, and it's fine to but it's, anyways, it can be confusing, and that's the point. It can be difficult to understand. It can be difficult to accept. It's not like we can just go and see like, okay, yeah, I see it. Vishnu's there. That's that's salty. This is the Garbha ocean. That must have came from the pores of his skin. I saw that, and then like, oh yep, there's Brahma up there, and I see the lotus stem. It's like, okay, like, yep, that makes sense. I saw it. It's in my experience. Have direct vision of it. Probably not going to happen for us, and it's probably because we live in our experience of the material world is different, and that's a point I've heard and mentioned again and again. It's different parts of the universe, different jivas have different experience of the material world and a material perspective. In Krishna consciousness, whether you're here or there may be some little subtle differences here or there, but in essence it's the same. Devotional service is Supreme Personality of Godhead. But as far as like understanding the material world, it's different. For instance, in the heavenly planets, they get raided by like the demons. They come in and try to capture their kingdom and stuff like that. And then there's also different creatures. That's not really happening so much on this planet. It's just like kind of interfighting. And anyways, they're not really devas here. So like that is going on. And then they use mantras and fight and different things like that. And then we see too, if you read in the 8th canto, it's described in one of the battles between the demigods and the demons that they were riding on like different like creatures, like rats and stuff like that. And there's like a whole list of different like animals they were riding on instead of horses. And so the point is, it's just different in the different parts of the universe, how people view things. So it may be difficult in our position to understand, to accept, or to believe, and we may have doubts. And that's there. The point is that that I would say maybe the main pivot point or the main thing is that at least our attitude should be that I don't understand, but cultivating faith and putting trust in Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and the Vaishnavas and such like that. Because so many different things may be beyond our level of understanding. And what to speak of just how this material world is created and how things function like that. What the spiritual world also, how things function there, because it's completely different also. We talk about the material world and so many different things, but the way the spiritual world functions is completely different. It's on a whole different dimension. There's no matter in the material world. Things don't decay. They're eternal, and then how things function in there. Anyways, we won't get into that. There'll be plenty of discussion of that when we get to the kingdom of God. I'm sure things will come up like that, and with the description. And then we also too there was also previously some understandings like that in the 2nd canto, because there was some glimpse of Vaikuntha. So, anyways, the point is our position is to have some faith, and then Krishna makes that point in the Bhagavad Gita, was this Maya Shakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjan Marashayam Asamshayam Samam Garmam Yatag Yatsasi Tatrino. So Krishna explains to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita that you just try to hear with faith, and pretty much you'll understand, and then your doubts will become clear. So that should be our position. And we see also Arjuna had just a tough time understanding so many different things that Krishna was saying, just like you could just say on the philosophical level. Because Krishna really didn't get so much into the creation of the universe and all those different things like that with Arjuna. But some of those things that Arjuna heard, so it was difficult to understand. So it's okay to be practicing Krishna consciousness, and maybe we don't really understand so many different things, or have some doubts, or like, is it really like that in the spiritual world, or like this, or like that, or like how to understand. So that's okay to have that and to be like that. But if we do have doubts, we should approach devotees who are in good standing, and we should express that to them and hear from them. And then if they may say something along the lines that it's inconceivable or maybe tough to understand, and then we just have to accept that. But we should understand that the way to act, so we hear, but the main way that we'll understand actually will be through service. When Krishna and the Vaishnavas and Guru is pleased, then that knowledge will become revealed. And then we'll have the faith will increase. And then there's that story there with the cobbler and the Brahmin. So the Brahmin, heard the far out story with Vishnu, and was just like, nah, like not real, bogus. And the cobbler heard and was just like, wow, like that's amazing. And then so the point is that the cobbler, even though the Brahmin read so many different things, heard so many shastras, so intelligent, but the cobbler had faith, and we can also say too that the cobbler had some vigyan, some realized knowledge of how Vishnu's energies are working, like that. So then that realization comes, that vigyan comes, and then it becomes a fact, and then we're not swayed, and then so many people may say so many different things, and there's unlimited ways in which people in the world try to disprove the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his functions in the material world. So then that becomes solidified. So that's actually the process, because we can also go back and we can see in the 10th canto with Brahma, he became bewildered when he saw Krishna. So, what to speak of him? If he became bewildered by seeing Krishna, he saw it all go down, more or less. I mean, he saw Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he saw Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, he saw Ramachandra, Vamanadev, Matsya, he saw the whole thing, he saw everything. Ain't no question about Vishnu real or not to him. But he saw Krishna and he became bewildered. So the point of that is that we may know everything in the material world, but still, everything in the material world is not enough to help us understand how it is that Krishna is acting. So Krishna makes that point in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is 7,000 verses, the ABCs of spiritual life. But it's the basis, and we can trace also Bhagavatam back to Bhagavad Gita. So this verse, what is it? It's Bhakyamam Abhijananti. So Krishna explains that by bhakti, Yadvan chasmi tatvataha, I can be known. So that is the way of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then that is exemplified with Brahma. And we could say also that Brahma was a devotee and he was, engaging in service. How did he not understand? Krishna? Well, that's the Lord's pastimes. But then we see that he was trying to also, he was thinking, well, is this Krishna, is this not? And then he was thinking, well, let me test Krishna. So then he exhibited his mystic potency. And so he tested Krishna, and then Krishna tested him, and then exhibited his mystic potency like that. So that's so we understand like that way. And then being in the world also, we have to explain these things. There's a pastime with Srila Prabhupada, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if this is in that book. I'll explain, maybe you'll know. But the devotees, they went to go, I think it was in Canada, but they went to go and show Bhagavatam or something. But they had a picture of Varaha Dev, and I think there was some, you know this? That there were some, they were saying, well, should we show this Varaha? Because it shows him if you look at the picture of Varaha and I think Karanyaksha, it's they're fighting on the ocean and the earth planet's down there. And then there's another one, Varaha Dev, with on his tusk is this Bhumi, the earth planet. So they were saying if we show this, people are going to think it's mythology, it's not real, so many different things. I'm paraphrasing, but Prabhupada said show it anyways. He wasn't we don't want to show that or whatever. Because it's, as being in the Parampara, it's our duty to defend it and to uphold these Shastric principles, whether or not society thinks it's amazing or not amazing, or they think it's it's laughable or laudable, or they believe that this is so stupid. So we have a duty to uphold that and to protect that. And some devotees may do that more than others, but and we may not have all the arguments and things like that. And that's also there in Chaitanya's pastimes, that some of the devotees, and where was that? I think Varanasi, they weren't expert enough to argue with, was it Prakashananda Saraswati? And so it's kind of mentioned that they didn't understand the Shastra so much. But they're pure devotees. They're pure devotees. So we understand that also, that some devotees, they may be pure devotees, but they may understand the Shastra and be able to explain it better. But it doesn't, and that's a discussion in and of itself. But that's there for Krishna's pastime. And we see that. I mean, that's obvious. You like Mahavishnu. That'll wake you up for a second. So, anyways. So we see that with great acharyas also. That they, Ramanuja Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and such, that they were able to explain the Shastra, it's described that Ramanuja Acharya, I think he was saying something Madhva Acharya, that it was able to explain just one name of Vishnu in 1,000 ways or something. And so we see that great acharyas, they're really able to explain the Shastra very lucidly. And anyways, but then other great devotees, they may be pure devotees giving their life to Krishna, and they may not be able to write a commentary on Bhagavad Gita or something like that, but they're still great devotees. But anyways, but some devotees, they may explain some of these things. And I was thinking also, there's so many, and I don't know them all, but Kalki-Prabhu explaining, with his archaeological research showing that how mankind has existed for longer. And then if you listen to some of his talks or things, he's very clear about it, that what does he say? One of the things he say, that my science is my religion. That's one thing he says. And right off the bat, that I'm a follower of the Vedic tradition and of Krishna consciousness, and this is what I practice, and then this is what I uphold, and then my scientific research is aimed at proving the Vedas that they are true. It's right off the bat. It's that's his thing, and then he goes and he supports that, and that's he's preaching and he's displaying that. And then we see also too with Sariputta Kalki-Prabhu, who's left this world some time ago. But similarly, he wrote some different books, and he explained like that. And he gave some really interesting examples, but just to give one, and then we'll kind of end there. But one example he would give would be that, kind of explain it the best that I can, but he would explain that this material world it's like a computer, and so different people have different bodies, and according to the bodies they have different abilities within the material world. And then he would explain that like a user on a computer. So like that. And I remember growing up in school, like if you guys, anyways, probably you all had computers growing up in school too. But like going into the computer lab and going on the computers, you were restricted so much access to the computer. You weren't able to do certain things. Like you couldn't delete like programs, and like maybe you couldn't go on the internet. And if you could go on the internet, you were like limited. Just like if I would go to the computer school and then try to go play like, those like games online, a different website, it was like blocked. And then if you like found a website that was like open, they would like block it next week or whatever. But you were like limited in like your functions on the computer. But like someone that was like an admin or like in the school, they had all the functions of the computer. So similarly, like he would explain like that in the material world, there's different like users and different bodies. And then like Brahma has like more functions in the universe because he has more admin permission. And so they would explain like that in so many different things in a scientific way and give talks like that. And then the material world, and then anyways, I'm paraphrasing. I can go on with that. So that is there, and that's a service in order to uphold the verdict of Shastra and to make sure that these things are understood, that this is a reality and this is a fact, and it's not just like some story or some, something that somebody conjured up, but like this is actually real and this is accepted, and like that, and this is what we're presenting. And so it's a big service to uphold that, and but we should at least have faith and cultivate trust in that direction, and believe the verdict of Shastra. So anyways, there's a couple things there. If there's any questions or comments about anything, we can go for that now.
Prabhu, you gave that example of the cobbler and the Brahmana.
Yeah.
And that is also found throughout the Shastra of, you can see that story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the devotee in the temple who was holding the Gita upside down.
Yeah.
But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was like so much impressed with his level of devotion.
Yeah.
And the also example was given of the wives of the Brahmanas, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about the, because you were speaking about, we get vigyan through realized knowledge through doing service. I was just trying to analyze like, what is it exactly that these devotees have? Because if you join the ashram and you're like holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down, it's like, what are you doing,
Yeah.
So I was trying to like analyze how is it that those kinds of devotees are glorified and exalted for their simplicity,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of glorification like that in Shastra. There's one verse by Rupa Goswami. I wish I had it written down, but I could, anyways, if I looked for it, I could find it, but it would take too long. But I can't even remember how it started. But anyways, the point of the purport is he mentions that like, where was, so I'll kind of paraphrase, I may forget something. So where was Kubja's beauty? Where was Dharma, this hunter's piety? Where was Dhruva's maturity? Where was Ugrasena's prowess? And I think where was Gajendra's like knowledge? So all these different individuals, great devotees, but they had some, Kubja was like, before she became beautiful, was like ugly. She was a hunchback. So that's like, like out of 1 out of 10, there's like a 1, like hunchback immediately. And then like, Gajendra's an elephant. So it's like, like, whereas like the, the elephant, Vedanta Sutra or whatever. And then Dharma is a hunter, like what's so pious about a hunter killing animals? And then Ugrasena, what happened to him? His son threw him into captivity. So like what's so like how is he like a big Kshatriya? So that verse is making and then Dhruva Maharaj was young. He went to the forest, for what? Because he wanted to get a kingdom better than his great grandfather. Why? Because he couldn't sit on his father's like lap, and then he got insulted because like some bad words. So that verse concludes that like pretty much that Krishna is not pleased by like all these material things. He's pleased by the spiritual thing, by the devotee. And then that's also there with Prahlad Maharaj. There's so many verses in Shastra that emphasize that point. So at least in our position, it's not that, that we just reject that, okay, we're not going to study Shastra and we're not going to follow the rules and regulations and we're just going to give all that up and we're just going to cultivate devotional service. Because we see that the Acharyas, like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and others of Lord Chaitanya's associates, they showed that by strictly following the rules and regulations, Lord Chaitanya is pleased by that. Guru is pleased by that. So we study Shastra and we follow the rules and regulations of Shastra, and in the spirit of service to Krishna, not in the spirit of trying to acquire material knowledge or trying to show oneself off as being like great. So the main thing is that purity of heart is there. So Krishna is showing that these individuals, even though that they're, because that devotee, particularly that case with that Brahmin, he was carrying out the orders of his spiritual master, even though it was like an order that he couldn't fulfill, more or less, because the spiritual master told him to read Bhagavad Gita, but he can't read Bhagavad Gita. But still, he had that faith in carrying out the orders of his spiritual master. And so that shows pure devotion, that the spiritual master is giving me an order, giving me instruction, and it's practically impossible, but let me try to execute that for the spiritual master's pleasure. There's nothing going to get anything out of that. Trying to you can't read a book, your spiritual master is telling you to read it. But that's the instruction, and that's the disciple has faith that by doing this, I'll please the spiritual master. And then Shastra says that by pleasing the spiritual master, Krishna is pleased. So by that, so the point is that we're cultivating Krishna consciousness, and we're trying to understand Krishna in truth, and that's there in the Shastra that especially in practicing sadhana bhakti, that we need to understand Krishna in truth. And understand the reality, and we have misconceptions, so to understand Krishna in truth. But it's also understood that understanding Krishna and understanding Shastra and hearing about them, that's accompanied by devotional service, which the point of all the knowledge, the end of all the knowledge, Krishna makes the point in the Bhagavad Gita, what does he say? Vedanta krit veda vid eva chaham, is to know him. And he also, as I was saying previously, Krishna says to know him, we have to engage in devotional service. So the central point of it all is that the conclusion of knowledge is to engage in pure devotional service. So if one is studying so many different things and, being in the temple and doing so many different things, but there's no affinity to serve Krishna, and render devotional service unto Krishna, that means there's something wrong. There's some, some cross-wiring. And so that's why those different things are given there to show that. Also, so you had something? Yeah. There's no mic? It won't stay. Okay. Okay.
Prabhu, there are some myths in science also, like the
yeah.
modern science. They say if you study hard, you'll be successful.
Yeah.
But it's a complete lie. So many people, they have PhD, 2 master's degrees, but they work like a regular job.
Yeah.
And they don't even say how to define success. But yeah, they don't challenge where they are, in their current situation. If they are shown a promise of a successful life, they'll easily take to it. But if we say, okay, there is time-tested way, I don't know. What do you think is the reason that they challenge the traditional methods compared to modern methods?
Yeah, scientists?
No, people in general. Even if we say, okay, if you study hard, you'll be successful. Most people have an idea now that, okay, it's not true, that if you study hard, you may not be successful.
Yeah.
But they don't challenge that compared to the the traditional methods. If we say, okay, if you do this, you'll lead a happy life.
Yeah.
So many people have done it. Just do this, you'll lead a happy life. It doesn't make sense, but just trust it, do it. It'll make sense. but people have a tendency to challenge like the traditional compared to something that is modern.
Yeah. Well, it could be different factors for that. I mean, one simple kind of answer to that is that it could be just a cultural thing, like different societies, like you're raised, like an individual's raised in that society, so they may have like more faith, like, and the, whatever, the particular ideas of the culture they were raised up in. And just, I mean, to kind of go, I guess, traditional, I don't know if you're saying traditional, referring to Vedic, but in like the Vedic system, people also too, I mean, like, they would directly perceive, like, if someone worships some demigod or something, they would like, it would be like, I don't know exactly how it worked because I've never worshipped no demigods, but they would like get the fruit of what they wanted. So then it was like clear, like, okay, like by doing this and like I get this. So then they would have like faith in the Vedas, and they'd be like, well, if you do this puja and that puja, then like it'll increase your money or whatever. Or there's so many different things. Like if you have bad health, the sun and this and that, you want a wife, you want money. So like people would like engage in those things, and then they would like get that. So that was kind of like, so that experience was like there, as far as like if we're just talking about just like kind of like whatever religion in and of itself, or dharma or artha and that kind of stuff. But there could be many reasons why people don't accept that now. I would say one reason is that it's just there's a lot of emphasis just based on just like direct perception, and specifically, I mean, people. We see also with like Kali Yuga. That's also another answer to that. Is that people's faith in religion and so many different things are decreasing day by day. And I'm thinking specifically like in Europe, whatever, so many hundreds of years ago, it was like people were very religious, and like the rulers were religious and stuff, and they had their own like religion or whatever. I mean, they say like Greek mythology and stuff, but I mean, that wasn't like, they didn't believe it was mythology at the time they were ruling and stuff. And Christianity was seen as like some like, whatever, it was like it's a minority. It was like to be a Christian back then was just like, it was like, nah. It's like going, it was like none of that. And then that like changed. But with, I think Constantine, he had like some revelation and, anyways, whatever. But the point is that like, so that religion was like, that faith was there, but then it seemed like more as history went on, there was more emphasis with philosophers on just like direct perception. And I'm kind of really summarizing that. Like, I think, therefore I am, and then like whatever. And then just like basing reality on like what you can directly perceive. And then so versus like basing reality on, a spiritual basis, for like lack of a better words. There's like personalities and like things like that are existing and in charge of stuff. I'm simplifying it, just speaking in the European context. Like what, like demigods. Okay, there's people that are like supplying the rain and the sun. There's personalities like that. That the world we live in, there's personalities behind it. So that's kind of like changed as time went on. And then when that changed, that was something I kind of meant to talk about, but there's not so much time. But in short, like people kind of like shifted away from like, even too, that's still material, but it's like more like on the subtle platform. But their only basis of reality is just like hardcore materialism. And then when you have that vision, then you can't really conceive or like consider like anything outside of that, because like the rain falls because of the clouds. It's not because like Indra is sending the rain, because that doesn't make sense, like according to science, because then there's like a supernatural power behind that, and we can't explain that like logically. So anyways, like a couple like little random thoughts on that. So, everything? Okay. Anything else from the Prabhus? Madhujis? One question.
How would you respond to someone who you offer, so basically someone is inquiring about some high level philosophy that you might not have the specific answer to, and so you give them a response of, that Krishna will give you the intelligence, it will reveal it to you, and also that, as you were saying in your class, is that we're more so focused on not necessarily getting so specific and stuff like that, So, yeah, what would your response be if they responded with, well, aren't we supposed to inquire? Aren't we supposed to be philosophically inclined? What would your response be? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So someone's asking a question that's pretty high, and we don't know the answer, but we tell them that, Krishna will reveal the answer, like that. So it's Srila Prabhupada, that would happen sometimes with Srila Prabhupada. One thing I've noticed in like his classes and stuff like that, it depended on the attitude in which the individual approached the question or gave the question. For instance, like sometimes like people would ask, like devotees would ask Prabhupada some things about like the spiritual world, and Prabhupada would say, just wait till you get there. It depends on like who's asking. Like if it's like a very new person and they're asking some questions about the spiritual world, we may like say some things just to kind of like satisfy their curiosity, and also to like attract them to Krishna consciousness, and just to show them that the spiritual world is very nice and very attractive and different from this material world. Now, if we're like sitting here wondering, for instance, we're practicing Krishna consciousness, that like for instance, in the spiritual world, does like what kind of bed does like Krishna sleep on? The point is that may not be like relevant to our like situation right now. And then even if we do get the answer to that, then like how does that help us like in our spiritual life? Like if like, okay, like Krishna sleeps on this bed, and then Krishna plays this raga on his flute, and the gopis, they dance like this and like that, and they put their foot here and put their foot there, and then they come back 2 steps, and then they snap. It's like, it's like, okay, that all that stuff may like be there. So with stuff like that, it's important at least to explain to the person that like, okay, like those answers you may have those questions, but it may not be relevant depending on what the question is. And it may be something like very complex and very difficult to understand. And we may not actually like know like the answer, because it may be like a technical thing. So it's like fine to say like we don't know. But as far as like things like understanding things, that is there in Shastra. And we all should too, like the individual is asking the question should also be patient and understand that, okay, like I may not understand something now, and I'll understand in the future, but the future, that could be 50, 60 years. It may not be like tomorrow, it may not be like, okay, we have some dream, and then it's like we see like so many different things from the spiritual world, or have some vision or something, or understand so many things. Or maybe like we hear like that, that if we just dedicate our life to book distribution, then like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will personally come and save us. Now, like that's something that's going to be revealed like at the end of life. So it's like we kind of have to like accept that and just have faith. But some things we kind of just have to have faith in, and we should be intelligent enough to also like discern that, of like where is like something that I can like understand, and which is useful for preaching Krishna consciousness and helping me now, and then also where is something that like I'm kind of just interested to know out of curiosity, and it really doesn't make much of a difference to my life. So anyways, there's a couple understandings there. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Vanchaka Patariyo Vesha, Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patidanam Bhavani Vivo Vaishnavi Vivo Namo Namaha. That's all right.